So we're back with another Genius of The Sopranos episode where we break down and analyze each and every episode of the show. Check out the previous episodes in the series, and while you do so, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. In Down Neck, Tony and Carm are called to the school after AJ and two classmates sneak into their school chapel and get drunk off the sacramental wine. If it were any other kid, we might dismiss this as typical unruly teenage behaviour, but given this is Tony Soprano's son, that looming threat, albeit laughable to anyone who's finished the show, that AJ will follow in his father's footsteps clouds AJ's future. The school psychiatrist suggests that AJ might have ADD.
ADD.
I'm sorry, attention deficit disorder.
At the Sopranos' home, Livia and Junior consider it a disgrace that AJ is suspended, and they bring up Tony's delinquent youth, stealing a car before he could even see over the steering wheel, for example. Tony discusses his youth with Melfi, and we flash back to moments of his childhood, including Livia threatening to put a fork in his eye, and her refusing to allow Johnny Boy, Tony's father, to live out in Nevada and pursue a business venture there. A key memory is of a resentful young Tony following his father and a young Janice to see where they're always going, initially discovering that Johnny Boy takes Janice to the fairground, but he ends up seeing his dad arrested. As it turns out, the mobsters take their daughters to the fairground to make their illegal chicanery appear innocent. Down Neck is the only episode in the series, interestingly, that was directed by a female. A woman boss? Never happens in the States. Never. We build on the previous episodes by taking a closer look at the behaviour of Tony Soprano's son and the question as to whether his shenanigans are influenced by Tony, whether in terms of Tony's parenting or that putrid fucking Sopranos gene being part of AJ's makeup. At the church, AJ steals under the statue of St. Jude, who, as Sean Connery tells us in The Untouchables, is the patron saint of desperate cases and lost causes. Fitting then, I guess. After Tony's called into the school, while he's out shaking down a construction company, I might add, the psychologist says,
Anthony sometimes has trouble following the rules, weighing consequences. At times doesn't think before he acts.
He could just as well be talking about Tony, and Tony's sheepish look suggests he knows this description is hitting a little too close to home. The close-ups of Tony and the doctor saying Anthony instead of AJ also drives this point home. Galani is staring so hard at Tony he might as well have turned to the camera and said to us, yes, I'm talking about him.
That's right, we're talking about you, you cagey fuck.
Tony even fidgets as the doctor says his piece, and fidgeting is brought up a while later. It's only when ADD is mentioned that the Sopranos couple speak. I knew it. I always knew there was something. It's an illness, right? Carmela says, practically sighing with relief, as if the duo have been unburdened with the possibility that their parenting and influence might just have been the reason why AJ is the way he is. All of a sudden, they're off the hook. Their son instead has a disorder. Hooray! Although at the very least, Carmela shows more honesty than Tony during their later argument in the bedroom, where she insinuates that Tony's influence has affected AJ. I have two eyes, as she says, and it links to her earlier woes in the episode College about retribution coming down on her through her children. Tony is still bitter that Melfi rebuffed his attempts to woo her in the previous episode. As you'll remember, in a typical reminder from the show that real life is not like the movies, Tony confessed he loved Jennifer and went in to kiss her, an event he no doubt envisioned ending with non-stop ass rape over her desk, but she turns him down and even diagnoses his profession of love as part of his condition. Here he's as juvenile as he was when he said, "You don't love me," last time round, except now he's got his defences up, with a poor attempt to, make Melfi jealous? Restore his shattered ego? How exactly did he think Melfi would be burned by comparing her, a distinguished, respectable woman, now there was a proud American, with Irina?
Well, I already got a girlfriend. She's Russian, 24. How old are you? How are you doing with it?
It's fascinating to get a glimpse into how Tony's upbringing was, and the flashbacks are so well done. The authenticity with the time period, the music, the acting from young Tony, Livia and Johnny Boy, the production design, even at this early stage, it just feels like the show is showing off at this point. Though season 1 is good, the rest of the show towers above it, and I always had this thing in my mind for some reason, that you just have to kind of get through season 1, power through it in order to get to the rest of the show. But that simply isn't true on a rewatch. If you take a break from the show and come back to it, as I have, the quality on display in season 1 is incredible. We get our first proper focus on Johnny Boy in this episode, and Tony contemplates what life would have been like had he not had a father like Johnny Boy. Maybe I'd be selling patio furniture in San Diego, he wonders. Wasn't Kevin Finnerty, Tony's season 6 dream alter ego, also a salesman? That's an interesting link here, and Tony dances between the idea of pondering on an alternative life and expressing grandstanding pride that he was Johnny Soprano's kid. But it's telling that as soon as Melfi asks about Johnny Boy, and Tony says, "My father?" we cut to a flashback of Tony playing catch with Mr. Magoo. I missed it first time around, but it of course speaks to the idea that Junior was more of a father to Tony than Johnny Boy was. His real father, in Tony's own words, wasn't around much, and he wasn't the hero that Tony tries to paint him as. This speaks to a video idea I've been wanting to make for a long time but haven't got around to yet. Something that's always hinted at, always sprinkled throughout the show but never directly confronted. Even in this episode, Tony assuredly says, "He was a good guy, my father," as he stares down awkwardly and shuffles with his hands. And this idea is that Tony, deep down, resents his father and begins to understand that in his rose-tinted view of the past, he does the easy thing and unloads all of his grievances onto his mother's parenting while giving his dad a pash, painting him as a saint, an image which he claws away at in the likes of the episode Chasing It, where he rebels against his father by going against his gambling advice and breaking the links between himself and Johnny Boy's world, ending his relationship with Hesh, almost whacking Paulie on the boat and such. As Livia says at dinner,
Well, you only remember what you want to remember.
a quote whose relevance would only become more prominent as the show goes on. Even with little things. I mean, Tony talked a lot about being born into the life, that AJ has opportunities that he didn't. And though that will be true to an extent, we do know that Tony did a semester and a half in college. He's smart, not like everybody says, like dumb, but he chose to drop out of college and join La Cosa Nostra. He threw that opportunity at a straight life away, in spite of how much he wants to push the idea that this thing of ours chose him, not the other way around. Junior shares Tony's agita.
How many fucking hours did I spend playing catch with you?
Which is powerful stuff, really, that these little moments, the good times, are what these characters remember and what they value. Tony has memories of Uncle June playing with him, and that's what resonates when he thinks of the word father, but he has no such memories with his own dad. The memories of playing catch with his nephew are also so ingrained into Junior's psyche that he even recalls it after his mind is being eaten away by Alzheimer's.
Well, you don't recognize me?
We used to play catch.
Sopranos creator David Chase's father was a draftsman who had an opportunity to move out of California to build printing presses, but Chase's mother wouldn't allow it, which no doubt inspired Livia's refusal to allow Johnny Boy to move the family out to Nevada for a business opportunity. Tony frames it reminiscently as his dad's last opportunity to get out of the life, squandered by Livia, who he then confronts at the retirement community. And though there is merit to his lamentations, again, just like how he was juvenile in goading Melfi about Irina, he's immature in his comments to Livia because surely Johnny Boy wasn't planning on moving out to Nevada to become an upstanding citizen. There's no geographical solution to a spiritual problem. He'd surely still be a criminal, still in the mob, just on a higher level. But Tony frames it as him being robbed of a chance to get out. There's no leaving the life. What's this, we're in the Navy? I gotta make a confession about something, and it's something I'm gonna keep an eye on in my rewatch. I never thought that Livia was all that bad as a parent, not anywhere near to the level that she is portrayed as by the other characters and the Sopranos fandom. When she threatens to smother her kids with a pillow or put a fork in Tony's eye, I acknowledge that of course it affected Tony, you can see it in his reactions, but I kind of shrugged it off thinking, well, isn't that normal? Don't parents always give out all kinds of threats to their children? And that's kind of because I myself grew up with a narcissist in the house whose method of being gave me a warped sense of parenthood and therefore a warped sense of Livia, where I just didn't see what everyone always was on about. It was only when I grew up a bit, after a few years, and I realized the things I experienced and had to hear weren't normal, that it dawned on me that the way Livia raised her kids wasn't normal. What do you think? Do you think Livia is as bad as she's made out to be? And is your opinion of her affected by your own parents? I appreciate your thoughts. Another element of this episode that will have diverse reactions is both scenes of Tony and Calm's talk with the school therapist. For sure, the show likes to cynically critique anything and everything, and this time it's psychiatry and cunnilingus, with the modern day trend to overdiagnose and label the smallest and most menial of actions. AJ is more or less a normal kid who acts out. He fidgets. What constitutes a fidget? An irritated Tony asks, as we punch the air in pride and agreement. It's always autism this one, ADD that one, never enough diagnosis for modern psychology. However, we all might have collectively just missed the point of the scene, given this episode emphasizes that Tony's upbringing made him what he is, not destiny set in stone, as Melfi says. Livia quite blatantly suffered a personality disorder of some sort, and Tony, here and now, has the opportunity and choice to engage with the school's medical team. Instead, he chooses to reject and dismiss it outright, going for the old school attitude that a thump upside the head is all AJ needs to be straightened out, which the show would show us never worked with AJ. Sure, it was a different scenario, but wasn't Tony's attitude with Galani dismissive, unwilling to hear the facts, exactly how Livia was with Johnny Boy's Nevada idea? Again, it tracks with what we've said in many videos, like our previous Genius of The Sopranos episode for Meadowlands, or my video Why We're Wrong About AJ, that Tony and Calm are largely responsible for the way AJ turned out. One of the final scenes, after Tony has confronted his mother and dismissed the doctor, is him watching the History Channel. And that's what he's doing the entire episode, replaying history, his own history, his parents' history, with the hope that he won't be doomed to repeat it. But just like he follows up the exercise by pulling out the Sundays and squandering all that progress he's just made, Tony will squander opportunities afforded to him in therapy to bring his son up in a better manner. Food and music in The Sopranos isn't something we've really talked about much on the channel. Maybe in a future video, but there's a lot to note here. For example, as Tony's flashback begins, the lyric, "One pill makes you larger and one pill makes you small, and the ones that mother gives you don't do anything at all," are sung, which are apt given Tony's just taken a pill that's supposed to make him feel good, and we know what his mother gives him is no good. When Johnny Boy returns after being locked up, he brings home ice cream for the kids as a kind of reassurance to the children that everything's going to be alright. I wonder if it's behaviour like this, and Johnny Boy bringing meat home for Livia, that has made adult Tony associate money and gifts with love and apologies. But going back to the ice cream, Tony sees that AJ is sensibly doing his homework, and what does he do? He pulls out the ice cream, as his father before him. I'm glad you caught that, very observant, the sacred and the profane. It's a great father and son scene, but it also taps into Tony's psyche, that the first time we hear the White Rabbit song, Tony is downing Prozac, and now while we're hearing it again, Tony is shoving whipped cream in his mouth. Given that Prozac is a medicine that's supposed to make you feel good, we can infer that food is a source of comfort to Tony, who eats in times of stress and emotional need. Even his first panic attack, staring at the meat his father bought, is related to food, as is the first one we see on the show, him hitting the deck when barbecuing, but that's something we can talk about in another video. An interesting piece of trivia is that one of the black kids that harasses young Tony as he gets off the bus is played by Michael B. Jordan in his first credited role. There's a great little scene when Tony is awoken by all the noise and chaos in the Sopranos household.
We're not lying around in bed all day. We're not running a hotel over here. Get up, have some breakfast. I don't want it. I'm not hungry. What you are going to do today is get up and go rake.
People often say that Vito working that one morning and resisting the urge to check his watch is the most relatable scene in the show for a working man, but I would argue, especially as a father, that this could easily be called the most relatable scene in the show. AJ eating the pear without a care in the world while Livia cries about Tony going to therapy is an amusing scene. This is an AJ that just doesn't care. Season 6 AJ was one who cared too much, and wasn't able to healthily process the demons that clouded his mind. One of my favourite lines from this episode is Tony saying, "If you'd been born after those feminists, you would have been the real gangster." I don't even know why, the line is just so hard, and it's finally a direct acknowledgement from a character in the show regarding Livia's influence and puppeteering, but one could argue it speaks to the themes of the episode. What with Tony talking about wondering what his life could have been like if his father hadn't gotten mixed up in the things he was mixed up in, and all the discussions on AJ. In a different time, in a different place, Livia might not have gone down as an overbearing housewife and difficult mother, but a stone-cold gangster. Anyway, $4 a pound. What do you make of Down Nick? Let me know in the comments section below. Subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.